The Morning Stroke Trap, 7 Dangerous Habits Seniors Must Stop Today. You probably don't think twice about your morning routine. It's a series of habits you've likely followed for decades without a second thought. And why wouldn't you? It feels comfortable. It feels like home. But if you are over the age of 60, there is something you need to understand right now that could quite literally save your life. That first hour after you open your eyes is statistically the most dangerous time for your brain. For years, I've watched patients come into the hospital with strokes that seemingly came out of nowhere, leaving families devastated and searching for answers. But when we look closer at the physiology of aging, the triggers were often hidden right there in the bedroom, the kitchen, or the bathroom. Most older adults in America assume a stroke is like a random bolt of lightning, unpredictable and unavoidable. But the truth is that your brain enters the morning in its most fragile state. Your blood is naturally thicker, your pressure is rising, and your vessels are stiffer than they were 20 or 30 years ago. Certain habits that look completely harmless, things you might even think are healthy, can actually triple your stroke risk before you even pour your first cup of coffee. I want to spend some time today revealing these hidden morning triggers that most seniors never recognize until it is too late. More importantly, I want to give you the simple, research-backed, life-saving changes that could protect your brain for years to come. Look, here's the thing about our bodies as we age. They don't give us as much room for error as they used to. We have to be more intentional, more careful, and more respectful of how our internal systems transition from the world of sleep to the world of the living. 1. Drinking caffeine immediately upon waking up on an empty stomach. When I speak with my older patients, I usually start with a very simple question that helps me understand their vascular health. What is the first thing you put into your body each morning? Most of them smile and tell me it's their coffee. They've done it for 40 years, and they see it as the only way to get their engines started. But after decades as a brain physician, I have to tell you that this familiar American ritual is one of the most underestimated triggers for early morning strokes in adults over 60. Think about what happens while you sleep. Your body goes 6 to 8 hours without a single drop of fluid. As we age, our bodies lose the ability to retain moisture efficiently, meaning almost every senior wakes up in a state of mild dehydration. This isn't just about being thirsty, it's about your blood viscosity. In medical terms, that dehydration makes your blood thicker, slower, and heavier. It's like trying to pump molasses through a narrow straw instead of water. Thick blood forces your heart to work overtime and reduces the smooth, steady flow. Your brain depends on every single second to stay healthy. Now imagine what happens when that already thick, sluggish blood meets a cup of hot, concentrated coffee on an empty stomach. Caffeine is a powerful diuretic, which means it pulls even more water out of your system, worsening the dehydration you already woke up with. At the same time, caffeine hits your sympathetic nervous system, your fight-or-flight response, creating a sudden surge in heart rate and blood pressure just minutes after you've opened your eyes. If you were 30, your body could probably handle that spike without much trouble because your arteries are like elastic rubber bands. But for someone over 60, whose arteries are naturally stiffer and whose vessels may be narrowed by years of plaque buildup, this combination is incredibly dangerous. It can trigger a stroke by creating a pressure spike that overwhelms delicate vessels in the brain. It also encourages blood clots because concentrated, dehydrated blood is much more likely to clump together and get stuck. I remember an 82-year-old patient from Arizona who was quite healthy for his age. He walked a mile every day, but he started noticing his hand felt clumsy at the breakfast table. It turned out he was having silent mini-strokes triggered by his routine of drinking strong black coffee before a single sip of water. Once he started drinking 12 ounces of water first and waiting 20 minutes for his coffee, those episodes stopped. It's not about giving up your morning cup. It's about timing and giving your brain the hydration it needs to stay safe. 2. Sitting perfectly still on the edge of the bed for a prolonged period. It isn't just what you drink, it is also how you move, or rather, how you don't move. Many of my patients have a habit of waking up, pushing themselves upright, and then just sitting on the edge of the bed for 10 or 15 minutes. It feels gentle, right? You're just letting your body wake up slowly. But for an older adult, this quiet stillness is far from harmless. It is actually a subtle condition that can trigger strokes and allow blood clots to form before you've even taken a step. While you sleep, your blood flow slows down and pools naturally in the lower part of your body. As we get older, the veins in our legs lose their elasticity and the valves weaken, making circulation naturally sluggish. When you sit perfectly still on the edge of the bed, that blood stays trapped in your legs instead of rising to your heart and brain. Your heart is trying to restore circulation after hours of lying flat, but your lack of movement prevents that upward flow. This creates a dangerous mismatch. You have thick, slow blood in your legs, while your brain is starving for oxygen and nutrients. This isn't just morning grogginess, it's under-circulation. The real danger here is that stagnant blood is a breeding ground for clots. If a clot forms in those deep veins while you're sitting there, a sudden movement later can dislodge it and send it straight to your heart or brain, causing a devastating ischemic stroke. I once treated a gentleman from Ohio who felt a strange fog and trembling in his hands every morning. He spent 25 minutes every morning sitting on his bed checking the news on his phone. His scans showed microclots in the small vessels of his brain, tiny injuries caused by that daily period of poor circulation. Once he started doing simple ankle rolls and shoulder movements while sitting, and shortened that sitting time to just a minute or two, his symptoms vanished. Your first minutes after waking are a crossroads. You either activate your circulation, or you let stillness sabotage it. A few seconds of gentle motion, flexing your toes, rotating your ankles, or even just squeezing your calf muscles, can be the difference between a healthy morning and a life-altering medical event. 3. Rushing to the bathroom with urgency immediately after standing. Wait until you hear about this next habit, because this one is something almost every senior does out of necessity, yet no one talks about the risk involved. Many people wake up with a sense of urgency to use the bathroom. They jump out of bed and rush down the hall as fast as they can. It feels natural, but for a 60-year-old body, this creates one of the most dangerous physiological shifts of the entire day. When you are lying down, your blood pressure is low and steady. The moment you stand up quickly, your body has to work incredibly hard to keep blood flowing to your brain against the pull of gravity. In younger people, the reflexes handle this instantly. In older adults, those reflexes are slower and the vessels are stiffer. This leads to what we call orthostatic stress, where your blood pressure drops suddenly, leaving the brain briefly undersupplied with oxygen. This is why you might feel that quick flash of dizziness. Now, when you combine that with the act of urinating, especially if you are straining, you engage what we call the Valsalva maneuver. This increases pressure in your chest and abdomen and forces your heart to fight against intense internal pressure. This rapid rise and fall of pressure can rupture fragile vessels or destabilize plaque in your arteries. Many early morning strokes actually happen in or near the bathroom for this exact reason. I remember a woman from Michigan who had brief blackouts every morning right after getting to the bathroom. She thought it was just age catching up to her, but she was actually suffering from mini strokes triggered by that sudden rush and the subsequent strain. The lesson here is to respect the first 60 seconds of your day. Pause before you rise. Sit up slowly, let your feet touch the floor for a moment, and give your heart and brain a chance to find their balance before you ask them to work. Rushing is a risk you don't need to take. 4. Skipping breakfast or taking morning medications on an empty stomach. There is also a growing trend among older Americans to skip breakfast or take medications on an empty stomach, often as part of a trend like intermittent fasting. While that might work for some, for many seniors, starting the day without food is a major stressor for the brain. During the night, your body burns through its glucose stores just to keep your heart beating and your lungs moving. When you wake up, your brain is expecting a refill. As we age, the liver gets less efficient at releasing stored sugar, making seniors particularly vulnerable to morning hypoglycemia. Even if it's not enough to make you faint, it's enough to starve your brain cells of the fuel they need to regulate your blood pressure. When the brain senses this fuel shortage, it panics and releases stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline to force sugar into the blood. This hormonal surge tightens your blood vessels and can send your blood pressure to unsafe levels. It also makes your blood stickier and more prone to clotting. Taking blood pressure or heart medication on an empty stomach can make this even worse, as the drugs might hit your system too quickly without the buffer of food, causing sharp swings in your circulation. I once cared for a man in Florida who skipped breakfast every day and struggled with confusion and shaky hands by mid-morning. He thought he was being healthy, but his brain was actually suffering from the constant swings in his blood sugar and pressure. Adding just a small amount of food, a handful of walnuts, a boiled egg, or some Greek yogurt, stabilized his system completely. Breakfast for a senior isn't necessarily about hunger. It's about providing a stable chemical environment for your brain to function safely during the morning transition. 5. Engaging with stressful news or digital stimulation too early. Now, let's talk about something that isn't physical, but is just as destructive. Starting your day with emotional stress. For many people, the very first thing they do is reach for their phone or turn on the television news. You're flooded with headlines, emails, and alerts before your feet even touch the floor. To you, it feels like staying informed, but to your nervous system, it's a jolt of pure adrenaline. 6. Neglecting to monitor your blood pressure during the morning surge. One of the most silent and deadly dangers is ignoring your blood pressure during the morning surge. So many seniors tell me they only check their pressure in the afternoon, or whenever they feel off. But high blood pressure is called the silent killer for a reason. You often can't feel it until the damage is already done. The most dangerous surge happens in the early morning, something we call the dawn phenomenon. Because of stiffer arteries and aging reflexes, this surge is much more volatile in seniors. This is the exact window when strokes are most likely to occur, yet it is the time when people are least likely to check their numbers. You cannot manage what you do not measure. A morning blood pressure check takes less than a minute, but it acts as a shield between you and a life-changing event. It tells you if your brain is in the danger zone before you start your day. I've had patients whose evening readings were perfect, but whose morning readings were consistently in the stroke risk category of 160 or 170. Knowing that allowed us to adjust their medication timing, perhaps moving a dose to the evening, and save their lives. If you have a blood pressure monitor, use it in the morning. Those numbers are the most important data points you can provide to your doctor. They are the early warning signs that your brain is under too much pressure. 7. Spending the first hour of your day in complete physical stillness. Finally, we have to address the habit of spending that first hour of the day in complete physical stillness. Whether you are sitting in a recliner with a paper or sitting on the couch waiting for the day to begin, prolonged stillness allows your blood to stagnate at the worst possible time. Your calf muscles are often called the second heart. They are responsible for pumping blood back up through your veins to your chest. When you sit still, that pump is turned off. For an older body, this stillness allows blood to pool and thicken in the legs, creating a literal traffic jam in your veins. It reduces the oxygen reaching your brain and increases the chance of a clot breaking loose the moment you eventually stand up to move. You don't need to do a heavy workout or go to the gym, you just need flow. 2 to 5 minutes of light, rhythmic movement, marching in place, doing arm circles, or even just gentle stretching while standing can cut your stroke risk significantly. It wakes up the endothelium, the lining of your blood vessels, and tells it to produce nitric oxide, which helps your vessels relax and expand. This allows blood to flow freely to your brain. Protecting your brain isn't about one giant difficult change. It's about these small, intentional choices you make every single morning. The aging brain is incredibly resilient, but it requires respect and a bit of help. It needs hydration, stability, fuel, and a calm environment to transition into the day safely. When you choose to drink water first, move your body gently, eat a small breakfast, and avoid immediate digital stress, you aren't just following a routine, you are practicing the best kind of preventive medicine. You are giving yourself the best possible chance to stay sharp, independent, and healthy for decades to come. I've seen these changes work in hundreds of patients. It takes about 3 weeks to turn these choices into a habit, but the payoff is a lifetime of brain health. Your future self is asking you to make these changes today, because your life, your memories, and your brain are worth that extra bit of care. Look, if this changed how you think about your morning, please hit subscribe, because I break down the latest health science and research like this every single week. Real evidence, no fluff, just the facts you need to stay healthy. I'd love to hear which of these habits surprised you the most, so leave a comment below and let's start a conversation about protecting our health as we age. Would you like me to expand on any of these 7 steps or provide more specific examples of the research behind them?